Let me know when we're ready.
Oh, we're ready. We're actually live right now. Sorry about that. So, Eric,
Awesome.
sorry for the delay and obviously a little technical problems, but please go ahead and introduce you and your company.
Yep, absolutely. Sorry for a repeat for those who are on here, but we'll run through it quick. My name's Eric Spahalski with Expert Roofing, Chicago land-based general contractor. We do roofing, siding, windows, gutters, basically all things exterior, regardless of the type of material. The only thing we don't touch is brick, essentially. But at Expert, we have three offices around Chicagoland: Crystal Lake, Addison, and Geneva. Do work in Wisconsin as well, primarily just across the border. A lot of work in Lake Geneva area. Just did church there earlier this year. At Expert, what we primarily focus on is the insurance restoration side of the business. When doing so, though, there's a lot of times that we run into difficult claims where we have further more difficult negotiations. So we're using our public adjusting arm, BZ Group, to go through those claims and determine can we achieve the end goal for the homeowner of a full replacement of whatever it may be, or maybe that they're not getting paid enough. uh, a lot of times we'll use services of an appraiser in situations like that. I'm going to put that on a future video. So Charles and I have talked about as I start to enter my slow season here closer to October, doing a series of little segmented videos that are more focused on specific aspects of our business. Public adjusting appraisal being one of them, types of damages being another one, kind of the insurance claim process, would be another one as well. But today's presentation is going to be pretty wide and general, and, will be, a good point and good information while being out in the field to be able to identify what you need to identify and answer general questions. And then those future ones will kind of give you some drilled down knowledge, for those that are looking to, get more of that in depth information. So, kind of kicking this off, the main things that we're looking for when we go out and we're doing an inspection, or we get a call from a home inspector or a realtor, or just a general call into the office, or however it may come to us, is we're assessing a property for a few different things. We're looking at the age, condition, wear and tear of the property as our primary things, and letting the homeowner know, hey, give you some peace of mind. Are you in good shape? Do you have life left of the shingle? And then also, if not, what types of damages do you have, if any? And is it wear and tear damages, or are they insurable damages? Insurable damages are going to be wind and hail, essentially, when it comes to roof or siding, or windows, anything along those lines. For wind, what we're looking for is what we're missing for missing shingles, torn, cracked, creased, nail pull throughs or wind uplift. Hail is going to be dislodged granules, impacted granules, holes, dents, kind of the list that you see. And I'll show you some examples of those on the next couple pages. The one big sign that we're looking for when it comes to hail is something that we call spatter. So when hail comes down and impacts a dirty surface, it's going to clean the oxidization or the dirt off that surface. So satellite dishes are a great place to look. Any type of soft metal is going to show us evidence of spatter. The shingle, you'll see these dark shingle with a little light spot, kind of like it's sun faded. That's spatter. So we know that hail's come down and impacted the roof. Now, when you see spatter, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's caused hail damage, and you don't necessarily have to have spatter to cause hail damage as well. But it's good supporting evidence. So this is actually pretty significant on this satellite dish. So this was a significant storm. It was the 5/27/2019 storm that rolled through Wheaton. This dish is from that storm. And that was a significant storm that basically damaged every single house in its path, where the entire neighborhood got done. A lot of times when we're dealing with hail, every house on the block doesn't necessarily have hail damage. Depends on the age of the roof, the direction of the house, pitch of the roof. All those things are going to come into play with the damages, and how the surface reacts to it. Aluminum is a big aspect for damage, and we'll touch base on that later on. But essentially, it's a pop can, so we always expect to see that on any type of property. Organic shingles. So organic shingles are an easy peasy, win, basically, is the short way to putting them. So organic shingles were actually made out of wood palm dipped in tar versus fiberglass. They were meant to decompose faster in the dumps. However, they were tested in dry climates, not in the Midwest. So in the Midwest, where we have high humidity and a vast change of the seasons, the shingles started to expand and contract earlier on the roofs, causing them to curl, and you get granule poppage or dislodgement. So all these black spots, it's not hail, it's the expansion and contraction of the shingle causing the granules to pop out. Eventually, they deteriorate to an extreme, like bad condition, and cease to exist. They'll fall off the roof, they'll get blown off the roof, whatever it may be. The catch with organic shingles is wind is covered, but age and deterioration is not. So with organic, most of the time, this is an easy claim. However, some carriers are going to fight you on it and say, hey, this is, not wind, this is age and deterioration. The big way that we tell, and this goes for regular asphalt shingles as well. If you look in the upper right corner of this picture, you can see this missing shingle that kind of has this really jagged edge along, and you see the previous part of the shingle towards the top. That's a deteriorated shingle. When wind comes and impacts a roof or removes a shingle, it's not going to remove it a little bit here, a little bit there, and slowly take it off the roof. It's going to take it off in one quick, poof, gust of wind. So towards the bottom of that picture, you can see it's the second one up, that's got a nice, clean, fairly straight line running across it. That's more consistent with wind damage. So that would be something that we would say, yeah, that's wind damage. That was not deterioration. And those are the things that we're, discussing with the insurance company when they come out, if they're giving us a hard time. Well, what's the differences? What is, damage? What says this is, damage versus wear and tear? And those are the types of details that we look at, is what the telling effects of it. And I'll do a future video that will get into the nitty gritty on that, as far as, color of the tar, rust on the nail head, all those little things, we end up looking at. Organic ridge cap, you'll see this more often than not, based on the age of the house. So once organic shingles kind of stopped being used, there were still a lot of organic shingles left. And these 3-tab shingles, you can slice and use them as ridge cap, and a lot of builders did. And so there's a lot of homes that we run into that have fiberglass shingles with organic ridge cap. It's probably one of the most common repairs that I do for home closings, is that the roof's in good shape, but they have these horrible ridge cap shingles that need to be replaced, and we end up just replacing all the ridge cap shingles. Organic shingles are about 20 years old now, so you'll see them, on roofs from, that were built around 2000 up until like 2008, and a little bit before them, but that's kind of the window where you'll see them the most. These edges are also a very common area of leaking because of the deterioration that they get. When you're looking at hail with your organic shingle, it's difficult to tell because you have the natural granule lossage from the shingle anyway. So organic shingle is very stiff and very brittle, so it's not going to impact or necessarily damage or give a divot to the shingle. It's going to more so just chunk it out. So what the key thing that we're really looking for is fresh black matting, maybe some fracturing around the impact. That would normally, be like a sign of thermal cracking, but on organic, it's more a sign of hail. Also, we're looking a lot at what we call keyholes or eye hits, where it's between the two shingles, where you're looking for a consistent shape going from one side to the other side. Those are going to be common areas that are good for us to identify on our organic to say, hey, this is actual hail. It's not, just granule lossage. Hail on a fiberglass mat, which is the majority of shingles out there, is going to be a little bit different. So it's kind of like running the finger across the palm of your hand. It's nice and smooth around the edges, get a little divot in the middle, fresh black matting. Sharpness is the big thing that we're looking for. If you run your finger across and you feel sharpness to it, it's probably a blister or a thermal crack, age, wear and tear, something else. It's not likely hail. Now, it can come in relatively different shapes and sizes when it does impact the shingle, but in general, it's carrying a fairly roundish look. Also, based on the size and the density and the wind speed behind it, you'll see kind of a stress mark coming out from where that hail actually impacted. couple other pictures of hail. Really hard to find on darker shingles because it blends in so well with the dark colored granules. So black shingles we usually call needle in a haystack shingles, because you got to be up there for a long time or you need really big hail. That's the next catch. Is in Chicagoland, we are not dealing with cattle killing hail. If you're in Texas, they have hail policies for their livestock, and for their farming as well, for their corn. So in Chicagoland, that really doesn't happen. We're dealing with nickel to quarter size a few times a year, or a few times every couple of years. We'll get maybe a larger storm that has some really good wind driven stuff and a few pieces of some larger golf balls. It's rare that we see golf balls. Usually it's a quarter. The last time we had, I'd say, good legit hail. While we had 4.7 of this year, we had good hail that went through Sycamore and went through Evanston. That had a lot of wind driven behind it. The size, yeah, it's reporting up to an inch. Was it really up to an inch? It's primarily wind driven. The last really, really big hail that we had that I'd say was decent was probably 2015. There was a storm, actually, I think it was 2016, that hit in Minoka that had softball sized hail. It didn't cause any damage. They were snowballs, essentially. There was no density to it. There was no wind driving it. So it was basically a giant snowball falling from the sky. Did it cause damage? Sure, but minimal. Not, the type of damage that you would expect to see, and not to all the homes. There was many homes that were perfectly fine. So the density is a big factor that we're looking at, and the wind is what we're also looking at. But we have storm maps to track those things. A couple other pictures of hail on shingles. So this is from Donan. They are a hail engineering. So Donan's engineering group, a forensic engineering group. So in cases of two different parties where we just are at complete ends and we cannot come to an agreement. A lot of times forensic engineers hired to determine if it is in fact hail or not. More so they're used in court cases where the claim ends up getting taken to court. So larger loss claims, but they do put out some decent information as well. Yes and no. It depends. On commercial properties, it will. So we had a commercial property that the owners finally gave up and settled on. And that's unfortunately, you pay insurance for a reason. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, you've got to remember that they're a business and they're there to make money and pay out a dividend to their shareholders. So, when an adjuster comes out and people tell me, oh, I don't want to upset my insurance company. Well, why are you paying them then? So when they come out, they're not doing you any favors. They're doing their job. Well, sometimes, we'll go into a disagreement where there's damages where they just don't want to foot the bill. So, I'll do two examples. I'll do a commercial and a residential. I have a residential right now in Bolingbrook with a specific carrier that does not do appraisal. They only do arbitration. So we have to essentially hire an attorney for it. They totaled out almost the entire roof except for the front. They paid for the back and the left and the right, but they're not paying for the front. They paid for collateral damages, window screens, gutters, downspouts, staining of the fence. And they identified 12 shingles on the front. I was brought in after it, so I never met with the insurance adjuster. And when I went out there and counted a couple weeks later, there was 21. And there's no storm dates between when they inspected it and I inspected it. So the guy had a miscount. They're refusing to acknowledge the damage to the front, and they're just paying for the repair on it, even though on the other sides of the roof, they totaled it out due to non-repairability. But they're saying, oh, no, you can repair the front. Well, how does that work out? And Illinois is not a matching state. So for us, the difficulty is because appraisal is not an option with this carrier is we have to go to court. Is court worth the court cost for the front side of the roof? No, it's not. The only reason why the homeowner would take them to court is a matter of principle. And the carrier knows that. And so they know that, hey, if they go to court, they will lose. But the likelihood of them going to court is pretty much zero. Therefore, they're going to win at the end of the day because they're not going to end up paying for that front side. And the homeowner's going to have to eat it. Unfortunately, that happens. We have a commercial in Barrington that we just ended up settling on. That we spent 8 months in court determining whether it was in Cook County or not, because it property is located in Cook County, but then the insurance carrier tried saying, "Oh well, this is a void contract. You never actually had insurance because you misrepresented it that it was in Cook County and you're not located in Cook County." So we literally spent 8 months in court over a county, and this is a huge claim. We're talking about a seven-figure claim potentially on this one, and the only reason why, what the biggest part of that is the damages weren't anywhere near, seven figures. The damages at the end of the day will have been maybe 250,000. But for where the business is located, there was significant loss of business because it's on Main Street. So we'd have to shut down downtown Barrington, and it had a direct impact on the metro station. So therefore, the metro would have to change around their schedule during the installation of it. So the insurance company would be liable for paying loss of business use to those other businesses, including metro. So that was the big thing is, they're looking at this saying, I don't want to pay, $1 million plus in loss of business use when the damages, are only a couple 100,000. We're going to court, seeing where we can settle. Where's our happy place, basically. And is what is. But the insured is not going to get the repairs done that they need to get done properly. They're going to do patches instead. But that was in court for almost 3 years, and finally the owner was like, "Okay, I'm done. I'm not dumping any more money into legal fees." Basically they walked away with their legal fees, paid back to them, and a little bit of money to cover some of the extreme immediate concerns. But it is what it is. So in that case, yeah, you bring in though these engineers. If you're disagreeing on damages, we'll bring in an engineer. But more so, the court cases are kind of, they're not often, but it's usually on larger claims where you actually go to court. But there's a lot of smaller claims that could go to court but never go to court, where you would bring in an engineer. This is where it's helpful, to know engineers in the industry. There's a couple that we work with. Everything's supposed to be non-biased in our industry. Everything's biased. Every single person the insurance carrier sends out is biased. Everybody that we send out is biased. So there's no saying. At the end of the day, the best way to explain is I met with the Allstate adjuster, and I looked at him. It was like the third inspection on this property. And he was a manager. He came out, and I looked at him. I'm like, "You do realize," I'm like, "that we're dragging the homeowner through the mud. If this was State Farm, this property would have been paid for and built, and I would have already collected on it and be going on to the next house by now." And he looks at me and he's like, "I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying no." He's just like, "But I work for somebody, and therefore I agree with, whoever has the gold makes the rules." Essentially, is what he said. And he's like, "That's where my paycheck comes from." He's like, "So that's what I'm going to do, is follow their guidelines." And I looked at him straight in the face, and I looked and I said, "Yeah." I'm like, "But that's the shirt you choose to put on personally every day." Um, and hopefully I got him thinking. But it's, is what it is. Some carriers are going to have stricter standards versus others. So anyway, moving on. Wind, we're looking at roof as well. Um, yeah, go for it. Yes. So Illinois is not a matching state. We're one of the few that are not. So basically, what that means is if your material is no longer available, it's no longer manufactured in the color, size, dimension, grain of the siding, exposure, it does not matter. Illinois will say you can do a repair. You have to replace that side, but you don't have to replace any other side. You have to replace the side because you can't put a 6 inch square into a 4 inch box. So you'll have to replace everything that's directly affected by that. But if you have a corner or one side of the roof, you don't have to replace the rest of it. Where let's say if you were in Minnesota and you had pink siding, and pink siding isn't available anymore, and they say, "Oh well, so sad, the closest color that you can get is orange siding." Well, then you put orange siding up on one side of your house, and you have pink siding on the other three sides in Illinois. In Minnesota, because it's not available, you would get all four sides of siding paid for, or you would get all two, three, four, however slopes of roof you have paid for and covered and completely replaced, because it has to match. Because most states are going to view that as diminishing the value of the home. And this is where the public adjuster comes into play. is in a lot of these cases where the Illinois matching becomes an issue. Illinois is not a matching state, so no, the sides siding do not have to match. The roof does not have to match, but it does have to be a reasonable line of sight match, and it cannot diminish the value of your home. I can't argue that as a contractor. That's where I argue that as a public adjuster. So, we bring into those aspects of the policy saying, no, Illinois, you still have to have a reasonable line of sight match. So if you pay for the front and it's not a reasonable line of sight match, when I'm walking my dog, I can tell that the right side is different. Now you're paying for the right side. And now you're paying for the left side because I can see that side too. So maybe, the homeowner only has to pay for the back side, unless maybe it's a corner house. But when we get to the backside, then we have an argument of diminished value because you have three sides of new siding and one side of old siding. You're diminishing the value of the home. And this is where the realtors come into play. So I love my realtors. They send me, good business, but also when I need them to write me a letter and pull comps for me, when I have a difficult case, that's what I'm having them do, is saying, hey, if we were to put this house on the market, with only X amount of new sides of siding, they would get asked for a concession and bring down the value of it. So that's one of the hardest things that we combat, though. Yep. For wind, I know you said short answer, and I kind of dragged that all a little bit. For wind, missing torn crease shingles. So this on the left is what we call a nail pull through or wind uplift, where the shingle is 3 feet long. So it's still attached to the roof through the other nails, but it's pulled through the nails at one end, and eventually it's going to slide out and look at the picture on the right. So this is a big issue that we have as well with carriers, where we'll argue and put it underneath the public adjuster. Saying what is damage, what is qualified damage. Because some insurance companies are going to say this is not damage because the shingle is still attached to the roof. And we're going to say, okay, well, show us in the policy what determines is wind damage. If this is construed as wind damage by the general knowledge of construction, we have plenty of documentation that would put this as wind damage, including from the manufacturer. Why are you saying it's not? Well, they can't legally put what is and isn't damage in their policies. So we'll win, but we have to fight for it. Neoprene failures. This is probably the most common thing that I see on older roofs, and probably the number one call I get from realtors, home inspectors. It's on almost every single inspection, is these neoprene boots expand and contract within the seasons, and they eventually crack. They start off as a minor crack and then they get bigger. There's a couple repair options based on the age of the roof. Maybe we replace the boot with a metal. We preferably don't use the neoprene ones. If they're getting ready to sell, or if there's not a lot of life left in the shingle, we'll use an aftermarket, what's called a perma boot, and it just goes over it and protects that, from. It will continue failure, but it will protect the house from damages that would normally fall or leak into it from snow or ice buildup. Metal damages. So metal is a great way to identify hail damage because it's metal. It's going to dent easy. It gives us this idea of size and quantity of hail, which is very important because when we're looking at hail damage on a shingle, the big thing that we're looking at from the insurance side is that damage on the shingle consistent with the collateral damage on the screens, on the metals? If it's not, and let's say it's sketchy. Let's say we don't have a lot of hail hits on this furnace cap. And so there's only maybe like 5 or 6 hail hits per 10 by 10 square on the shingles, and we need 8. Well, we're going to look at the size of the hail hits on the metal vents and see if it's consistent with the size of what we see on the roof. If it's not, then we can determine, and maybe those markings on the shingle are just age and wear and tear. Maybe it's not actual hail. Maybe it's more along the lines of, general light blistering. Those things are things that we have to look at when we're inspecting the property and determine whether it's worth the claim or not. Like you just mentioned, the 6 hits, the 8 hits, most insurance companies are looking for 8 hail hits in a 10 by 10 area per elevation of the roof. State Farm's looking for 5. Allstate's looking for 11 to 12 based on the type of shingle. So it kind of gives you an idea of the spectrum. As far as wind damage is concerned, this is a biggie. some insurance companies take a non-repairability standpoint, and it's becoming more common. State Farm takes a non-repairable aspect of, if you have a non-repairable shingle, like an organic shingle, or maybe the shingle is just old and deteriorated and worn out, but there's wind or hail damage to it, because it's non-repairable, meaning that we can't replace that shingle without material transfer from one shingle to another shingle, or tearing, creasing, cracking, or breaking off a completely new shingle in order to replace that one shingle. It's non-repairable. One damaged shingle will pay for an entire roof or that entire elevation. A lot of insurance companies are taking a repairability standpoint now, where even if it's a non-repairable shingle, they're just going to pay for the repair and saying, hey, it's non-repairable, not our problem. We pay for the exact shingle that's missing. Technically, we're supposed to indemnify you, and we can't indemnify you, but we're going to attempt to use this as a loophole. So we end up playing this domino effect with them. So instead of paying for one shingle, they'll pay for 10 shingles. But they want a video of the attempted 10 shingle repair, and then we will send it in saying, see, it still failed. And then they'll pay for another 8 shingles, and then another 7 shingles. If essentially try to patch out this roof until you get to a certain percentage. So it's a lot of back and forth. Skylights. So metal damage to skylights is also very common. On the back of the flashing is where we see it the most. The cladding, not so much. The cladding's a very thick metal. So in order to have damage there, you have to have some pretty dense hail that comes down. If you have damage to skylight cladding, you have damage to the roof, no questions asked. If you have damage to your soft metals, like the flashing, the back of the flashing, the skylight, or a box vent, it could be light hail that didn't damage their shingle technically. Cladding, it's definitely damaging the roof. The big thing to know with these skylights, though, is that Velux retooled all their skylights a couple times. In 2002 and 2010. So based on the age of the skylight, even if it's only the flashing kit that's damaged, we may not be able to replace the flashing kit. You may have to replace the entire skylight unit due to whatever damage it may be. We have letters from Velux that we send in, to the insurance carriers and everything for that, and they're all pretty aware of it by now too. Gutters, small dimples in the lip or the pan, based on storm direction. The big thing that we're looking for is making sure, that they have the gutter apron, that it's fastened through. There's a couple of different ways to install ice and water shield. A lot of houses that we're now going back and doing have ice and water shield, whereas 5-10 years ago, the roofs that were getting replaced, most of those houses didn't have ice and water shield. Now we're kind of entering that stage of where it was code. The big catch with ice and water shield is installing it correctly. The manufacturer says you can go right over the gutter apron. The Roofing Council, International Roofing Council, says that yes, you can go over the gutter apron, but ideally you would go under the gutter apron over the fascia, put the gutter apron on, and then put a piece of stripping ply over the seam line of the gutter apron to the ice and water shield on underneath the shingle on the top side to give you the most protection. Rarely will you ever see that. But a lot of times what we do see is where you lift up the edge of the shingles here and you'll see the ice and water shield running below that gutter apron without a piece of yeah, so you have that, which is fine. It can run, and the felt always runs below it. On the older houses, you have the straight felt. But if you see the ice and water shield running below the gutter apron without a piece of stripping ply there, then water's getting behind the gutter and dripping out from behind the gutter. Maybe it's getting into the fascia or the soffit. It depends on how they ran that underneath. Is it acceptable? Technically, per NRCC, it's not ideal. Is it going to cause a problem? Probably not, but it could. So, that's something that we see frequently. Is it's just kind of one of those corners that a lot of contractors cut, and they sell stripping ply. It comes in like a little 4 to 6 inch roll that you can just roll it out. So whenever we're replacing gutters on a house, that's what we do. We know that, hey, we're going to install it like this because we're replacing gutters. If we're not replacing gutters, then yeah, it goes right over that gutter apron. Omni gutters. These are a big red flag. So they look like fascia, and it's a box gutter essentially. So This Omni gutters were made during the housing boom. Ironically, we have a lot of them in the Chicagoland area, whereas a lot of other states never even got them. The company that made the Omni gutters, they had two machines that made them. The machines broke. And so they are no longer available. The catch with this is that in order to replace this, these machines are broke. We have to rebuild the whole entire soffit system. So when this comes down, the soffit comes down with it. We have to put up new soffit. There's no wood fascia board behind this, so we have to put up a new 1x6 piece of lumber. Based on how those rafter tails come out, we may have to do additional framing there as well. And then you put up your new aluminum fascia and then your new gutter on top of that. The next catch with these is they're riveted into the side rake fascia. So we end up having to replace the rake or gable fascia as well, just to replace these gutters. One dent, just one hail dent for that length. So if obviously if you have 20 feet here, you got 50 feet on the left side, 36 feet on the right side. Each one of those gutter runs needs to have its own individual hit, but all you need is one hail dent, and it'll pay. So actually, this is a kind of a good example on this one. I mean, this one, well, maybe not. This one's kind of wobbly, you can see. So the Omni's a curse because of the big box. It also builds up a lot of snow and ice and pulls a lot of weight away from the house. So you'll see sometimes these just kind of, are wobbly and can fall off. The catch with dents, uh, this one isn't a good one either. All right. So we have a good picture of it, but essentially what happens is once you get a divot, and it's the same reason why they pay for a roof and pay for siding as well, for any type of hail damage. Is hail damaging today? In most cases, it's not. Unless you're talking about very sizable hail that punctures through, the plywood of the roof, something catastrophic. But what it does is it reduces the life. So once you're reducing the life of something, it becomes the liability of the insurance carrier per your contract with them. So you get this little divot in the shingle, you get this little divot in your siding or on your gutter. You now have an area where debris is going to build up, where water, snow, ice is going to build up. As that happens over the next couple following years, it's going to erode away at that shingle and make it a weaker shingle, more susceptible to wind damage or creating a larger hole where water can get behind the shingle that's underneath it getting into the house. With gutters and siding, it takes a little bit longer, but it can, essentially erode out, cause a weak spot. And as it becomes weak, it becomes weaker and weaker because then more debris is building up, and eventually that gutter pulls away from the house or has a big hanging part of it because that's where all the debris sits in the entire gutter from a tiny hail hit from 6 years ago. Um, so it's the eventual loss of damage that will happen to it. And then with siding, or if it erodes away, you can get, where it erodes away to a hole. Through the siding or through the gutter itself as well. But that's why they pay for it. There are policies that are that do have cosmetic riders, which exclude those types of damages. So that's one of the big things to pay attention to when you're getting an insurance policy is that you have replacement cost coverage or RCV, replacement cost value, and that you do not have any cosmetic riders. With the cosmetic rider, essentially what it says is if you have a damage to item that is still functioning how it should and still should function for the majority of its expected life, then it's cosmetic damage. So if you get a hail hit to a gutter or hail hits the side of the siding, they're not going to pay for your gutter and they're not going to pay for your siding because the gutter is doing what it needs to be doing. It's draining. It's still going to have a very long life in the grand scheme of things. There's breakpoints underneath those policies from some insurance companies where they'll say, okay, if you have one hit, we're not paying for it. But if you have 12 hits, then yeah, we're going to pay for it because that would be significant. That would have a significant effect on its life. But one hit is not. So they increase that number in some of those. Some of them you have to have an additional rider Secura, I believe it's Secura, has a cosmetic exclusion on it. However, you can get a rider that covers a flat 10,000 for cosmetic damages, or up to 10,000. So it's all about knowing the policy, and this is where the public adjuster aspect comes in. I also used to sell insurance, so I formally come from the financial background. And I still have my licenses active, and I still go to continuing education, for property and casualty and life and health and everything. And I talk to these underwriters, and it's in the grand scheme of things, it's just what all they're really doing is they're structuring different types of policies to meet different demands of the market, for price points of homeowners. Essentially, what the sad part is most homeowners have no idea what type of policy they're getting. They have no idea what type of coverage they have. What I always tell my homeowners, I say, go find an agent that's old, that has gray hair, that you're going to outlive. And when they die, find another new old guy, because they've been around for long enough that they know how policies work. They know what type of coverages you need. They know what type of coverages you don't need because they've seen it. Unfortunately, new agents and all agents in general now do not deal with claims. It's unfortunate, but it's fortunate at the same time. So agents have always said, hey, you've got to go get 3 bids. You do not need 3 bids. That's a myth. Agents are no longer involved in the claim process. So they don't know when you file a claim unless they check your account or, get a flag with it. But they used to be. So your old agents, have an idea of what types of coverages you need. So they're going to be more able to sell you the proper type of policy versus selling you a premium and calling you to wish you a happy birthday. The myth with the 3 bids, and this I'll probably do an additional presentation on, but it's good information to know, is that there's a third-party company called Xactimate, and they're a pricing company and a software company. So we're a member of Xactimate, and every single large insurance carrier uses Xactimate as well. What Xactimate does is they go out on a month-to-month basis and they say, what's the current price of asphalt shingles? What's the current price of laminated shingles, 3-tab shingles, designer shingles? What's the current price of vinyl siding, aluminum siding, gutter guards, premium grade, high grade? And they do all the different grades. What's the current price of a kitchen sink? Everything down to your mailbox is in this software. It's the same software that the carrier uses to value your home when they sell you the policy. What's nice about that is they do all the pricing, and they change it on a month-to-month basis based on your zip code, cost of oil for delivery, or gas for delivery, manufacturing costs, and then they select 600 contractors every single year to submit labor pricing. And it takes the average of all that and it spits out a price. So that way, when an insurance company comes and assesses your property, or I meet with an insurance carrier, we're not discussing price. Price is irrelevant to us. We're discussing damages. Okay, what's damage? How much of that? What's the linear footage? What's the square footage? What type of sink faucet is that? What type of fascia is that? Is that pine board, or is that cedar, or is that treated? Those are the things that we're looking at, and then it all goes into the software and it plugs out a price, which is great for the realtor aspect. And this is what I do a lot with my realtors. If I have to write a report, I'm able to use this so that way, if there is a concession that's needed, I can present a report and a price, which would be the exact same as the insurance carrier would value it. So essentially, it's a guarantee that somebody will do the work for that cost or less. Gutter guards, damage to gutter guards. Whenever you have damage to like plastic or vinyl, it's going to kind of give this little half round. A lot of times with gutter guards, it'll puncture through the whole entire thing and you'll just see a hole. But a lot of times you'll see kind of this half round, which we call a smiley face or a frowny face. Different types of gutter guards. You have your cheap plastic ones that snap in, screw-ins, and then you have ones that install underneath the shingles as well. As far as gutter guards go, they're not a maintenance-free product. So if you see them, are they beneficial? Are there houses that need them? Absolutely. But they're not maintenance-free. The problem with the gutter guard is they install flat into the gutter. So where does the debris go? On top of the gutter guard. Where does the water go? Over the debris. So you have to clean off the top of that gutter guard with the long broom, or get up on the roof and blow them off every now and then. There are some on the market that install underneath the shingle to the front of the gutter, so they match the pitch of the roof. Those would be the ideal ones to have. The problem is on low pitch roofs, they're not going to be as effective. So in that case, it's like, and do you spend the money for that one versus a regular flat one? Custom bent fascia. We see a lot of issues with concessions where somebody will say, "Oh, you got some damaged fascia. We want a couple $100 to fix this damaged fascia." That's way more than a couple $100. Custom bent fascia has additional bends in it, so it takes up a lot more metal. It could be because there's a 1x2 sitting behind here. It could be because this is supposed to dual act as a drip edge. So this is one of the biggest issues that we see with even building inspectors, is where a building inspector will say, "Oh, that's dual axis drip edge. You don't need drip edge." No, you need drip edge on this house because it's not an actual true drip edge. So this custom bent fascia comes up, pops out, and then it bends underneath the shingle to dual act as drip edge. Well, in this case, in 98% of the cases that we look at, this custom bent fascia only bends in maybe a half inch. Drip edge is supposed to go in 2 inches to cover that entire gap or that seam from that fascia board to the plywood decking. So a lot of times when I see this, and for you guys when you're out inspecting on a home, if you got a ladder up, lift up the edge of the shingle, see if it actually goes underneath. If not, then they don't have drip edge, which is a code requirement. Um, can you ask for concession on it if it's not damaged? Probably not, because it was acceptable when the house was built. So it's kind of one of the things. Hey, when the roof gets done, make sure that they're addressing this and don't let it slide through again, because realistically the local building inspector isn't going to check it. So I'll see a lot of houses with roofs getting done where I don't see the additional drip edge put on, and I know that the contractor didn't put the additional drip edge on because they know that the building inspector isn't going to verify it because the building inspector is assuming that that is correct. Yep, those pull away quite a bit, because they're just not fastened very well. A lot of times, and a lot of times that little bump out is hollow. So when we replace it, we'll just go back with the regular flat. So aluminum siding, it's a holy grail in the storm industry. 8 dents per side, but it has to be a hail dent. The big thing with a hail dent, when hail impacts a metal surface, it's just going to leave a nice divot. It's not going to have a line in it. It's not going to scratch it. Then it's a branch that hit it, a baseball, something else, not hail. Um, but it's very easy to find damage in the lips, and then the middle pane is a little bit harder to find based on how thick the wood grain. 8-inch aluminum siding frequently has lead behind it as well. Sometimes asbestos. A lot of these, how 8-inch was used really heavy in the 70s. So the catch with all that is lead and asbestos insurable? No, it's not. It's a disclosure on your policies. However, if they pay for the siding and we disturb it, then they have to pay for it, and the mitigation cost on this is huge. So lead and asbestos mitigation is, based on the size of the house, easily 15,000 up, with out of question, not even seeing the house. I can tell you that much. For a house like this size, it has a bump out on the other side, it has brick on the front. Lead mitigation on this house would probably be 16, 18,000 if it had lead. This house did not. I just did one, and the lead mitigation was 22,000 on it, and it was a single story ranch, in Batavia. Not a huge house. Maybe 1,200 square feet, something like that. Um, the catch with lead mitigation, it's the safety and it's the disposal. It's the same thing with asbestos. It's the safety of the guys while they're removing it, and the safety of the neighbors around it, and the disposal. So you got to set up a 20-foot wall of plastic around the perimeter of the house. You guys have to have either Tyvek suits on or be wearing a mask, with the air filters, so they're not breathing it in as they pull it off. That's the biggest thing, is it's getting into the air while they're pulling it off. So they want to protect the area around it. So you have a lot of setup and a lot of labor, and you can't just yank it off. You got to take it off a little piece at a time. Yeah, behind aluminum siding, you'll run into it. Asbestos chimneys will run into a lot as well, where there's an asbestos chimney that's surrounded by like a regular chimney, or surrounded by a faux chimney surround. So when we redo the flashing on that faux chimney, we're affecting the asbestos. Therefore, we got to take the whole entire thing down. Asbestos insulation, we run into a fair amount as well. Not frequent, but more than you would normally think. So Halo 2 siding, we use chalk to mark everything. When you run it across the side, you can see the little indents. It makes it very easy to identify. Based on the time of day, we use flashlights as well. You can point it at the side of the siding and you'll see all the little dimples light up. So it becomes very easy to identify. Vinyl siding, cracked, looking for a smiley or frowning face. I mentioned it when we're on the gutter guard screen. Just kind of that half round. Occasional holes based on wind speed. Vinyl's not going to damage very easily. Unless it's a thin builder grade. A lot of times you'll see kind of those color spots that are in a straight line going down siding. That's the nail head that was used to nail in the siding behind it, and it heats up from the sun and causes that discoloration to the vinyl. That's when you know it's a cheap siding. So that's super thin, 4.0 builder grade siding. And it's those nail heads that are heating up behind the siding that's causing that discoloration. Those things you're going to find damage to generally pretty easy. Supporting damage, window caps, cladding, screens, decks, fences. This is window cladding on this one. So this one is an aluminum clad window. This isn't a window cap. So if I find damage like this on a window, this whole entire window is getting replaced. So your aluminum clad manufacturers, basically Marvin, Pella, and Anderson, say that if you replace the cladding, you avoid the warranty. So it's some of their windows, it's possible, but when it's under an insurance claim, you would actually get a full window replacement out of it. HVAC units, your condenser fins. This is a big thing too. Every condenser fin on HVAC units pretty much has hail damage to it. And you can comb those out, and it's not a big deal. You can go buy a comb and do it yourself, realistically. If it has significant hail damage to it, based on the model of the unit, those fins may need to be replaced. Based on the model, they may not be able to be replaced. Therefore, the entire unit itself will get replaced. So if you've got a house and it's inspection and they've got a lot of hail damage to those condenser fins, and you're thinking, oh, well, that's probably just a comb out. It's $100 to have an HVAC guy comb it out, or they could go buy a comb for $15. If it's an old unit, snap a photo of it, send it to your HVAC connection. If you don't have one, send it to me. I'll forward it to my HVAC guy, and I'll send them a picture of the model, the serial number, and then a picture of the fins, and say, hey, is this combable? Or if not, is there replacement available? If not, that $100 insurance payout now becomes a $3,000, AC unit, or however much it may be. Soft metals, vinyl windows will chip out. That's the one on the left. Soft metals, a door, where it just comes down, causes that same looking dent. Window screens, your ALK flashing. Wind on louvered dryer vents is very common and to see, and frequently not paid for on insurance claims. They usually just walk past it. Same thing with mailboxes. A lot of times they ignore the mailbox. So these are both fairly combable. They're not horrible. The one on the right may be a little bit tougher to comb. These hail guards are nice to have. Hail to wood, it leaves fresh wood exposed when hail impacts it, so it's going to clean off whatever paint stain you have on there and then leave some fresh wood. In this scenario, realistically, we're still just power washing and restaining unless it's significant as far as the number of hits, in which case then we would replace the board. Fencing. So based on the condition, is this significant? Not necessarily, but because of the condition of the fence, we have to replace a lot of these fence boards because we can't actually power wash it. So that's the catch with where you run into issues with insurance claims is, where they're on the hook to replace something because of the condition of it, versus where they would normally just power wash and stain this. Now they're replacing a good chunk of the fence because the fence is just old. Other roofs, cedar shake, modified bitumens. You need significant hail to happen to cedar shake. Most of the time, if we're doing a cedar shake roof, it's not from hail damage to the actual cedar shake. You'll have minor hail damage to the cedar shake, but you'll have damage to the components, the open valleys. And when replacing those, we have to remove an X percentage of the cedar shake. If it hits a certain percentage, then per remodeling code, essentially most insurance carriers are going to total out the roof. Also based on the repairability of the cedar shake. So if it has a lot of butt rot, you'll see it basically at the base of a cedar shake where it's deteriorating. It's going to be non-repairable. We're not going to be able to do a repair or replace that valley or replace those vents without causing a domino effect with the cedar shake because it's just so brittle. So that's a big aspect that we're looking for on cedar shakes. If I don't see butt rot, I'm probably not even climbing up on that roof to do an inspection. I'll look at it from the ground. If I know there's missing pieces, then we're charging them essentially hourly and labor to just go in and patch a few missing pieces. The problem with cedar shake is it has high maintenance costs. You've got to seal that thing every 3 to 5 years. And after you lived in the house for 50 years and you've paid $4,000 every 3 to 5 years to seal it, and now it's time to replace your roof, you're dropping another $50,000 to replace it. So you basically pay for a couple roofs in the time that you live there, assuming that you're there for a long period of time. Ideally, a synthetic shake if somebody likes the appearance of cedar shake. There's lots of HOAs that require you to have cedar shake, though. I always tell my homeowners, as horrible as this sounds, if you're not going to be here forever, don't bother maintaining it, or maintain it maybe every 5 to 8 years so you don't have, potential leak issues. And then by not maintaining it, you're going to get the butt rot. It's going to become non-repairable and you're going to be able to put it underneath the insurance claim. But if you are the ideal homeowner, you're never going to be able to put it underneath an insurance claim and you're going to drop $50,000. Cedar shake is around $1,200 a square. So based on the size of the roof, they can get pretty expensive. Modified bitumen, a lot of times we will not see hail damage to it. Any type of flat roof, what we're looking for is kind of a ripple effect. I've got a photo of that on the next one. But a lot of times if we're doing a roof and there's a modified bitumen, we're still replacing this because of manufacturer spec of how the roof is tied in between nail holes or multiple layers. It causes, once again, kind of a domino effect where we need to replace it. Spatter on cedar shake, it just cleans off, the dirt. Butt rot, metals in the valleys. This is really common on the right-hand side. This is what we see most of on cedar shake. This is just maintenance where you gotta go out and we have to spot replace. These faux chimneys are evil. They leak. So people put them on to say, hey, we like this decorative finish. It gives a thing, but they rust out. So a lot of times, if somebody doesn't want to get them replaced, we just paint them, so that they look fresh and new. But the base of them usually rots out, the top of them usually rust out, and you usually get water from them. Flat roofs, a lot of ripples, bubbling, seam pops, deteriorated openings. So this tells me that it wasn't rolled out properly, or there's moisture that got underneath there at some point in time. Based on the age of the roof, yeah, it's probably going to eventually happen. But if it's relatively newer, you shouldn't see it. It'd be an improper installation. So on flat roofs, you're going to see a ripple effect, kind of like dropping a stone in a pond. You're going to see a little mark in the center, and then your circles around it. This TPO here to the right has significant hail damage to it. Most cases here in Chicagoland, you're going to see a few of these. You're not going to see them all clustered together like this, but you have to look around the roof to really identify it. The big thing with commercial roofing, and we do drone flyovers with thermal cameras to see if you have water penetration that's gotten underneath there and moisture buildup. Is you're usually going to have when you see ripples like this on a flat roof, is there's some type of moisture that's getting underneath it. If it's from a storm-caused opening, so a deteriorated seam isn't going to be covered, but if it's from a storm-caused opening, you may only have a little area where you have that storm-caused opening that needs to be patched, maybe 2-3 square feet. But if the water's gotten underneath it and it's spread throughout the roof, the carrier is liable for replacing that entire section because we have to remove the saturation from underneath the roof. We can't enclose the saturation. With most commercial roofing, you have insulation board, so it's going to saturate very easily too. Even a little bit of water is going to go and travel a long way underneath that roof. So the thermal imagery is huge when it comes to commercial roofing. Um, Also, with that insulation board, the IECC code is frequently updated, and pretty much every single commercial roof is probably not up to code. So you need 5.2 inches at the lowest point. And assuming it's a flat roof that has internal drains, that means that's the 5.2 inches. So the outside wall is probably closer to 8 inches of insulation board that tapers down to that 5.2. That's, somewhere in the middle of the roof. So you're talking about custom cut ISO board as well. The big factor that we run into with that is there a parapet wall that's high enough to accommodate adding that increased insulation? If there's not, you may have to redo your outside walls and build a new parapet wall. Based on the municipality, they may allow you to just put on, an aftermarket parapet wall and frame it out, or they may require you to match the existing. I had a building in Addison that was a brick facade, and the building code and inspector said, no, it's brick. It has to be brick. You can't build a wood parapet on there and cap it out and put it over, extended cap on it. So they had to add an entire foot of brick around the entire perimeter of the building to account for the additional 8 inches. So the brickwork was more expensive than the roof. So that is all I've got on this presentation. Yeah.
There we go. We're about an hour into everything right now, and I appreciate everything that you've done on here. I'd like to ask your opinion and have you defend something on this. I'd like to talk about some derogatory things, and I want to use the term storm chasers. All right, and then get into the insurance fraud and what's the difference, and why is it okay to go ahead and make a claim for roofing damage on the insurance as opposed to the guys that just travel from area to area and trying to get the quick buck.
Yep. So storm chasers are a fun part of our industry. Technically, am I a storm chaser? Yeah, I suppose. We call them fly-by-nights. So when you have the biggest thing I tell my homeowners, or when I have to defend myself even, is we call them fly-by-nights. Look for a company that's local. Look for a company that's not traveling the country, going from storm to storm. Somebody that, hey, if there's no storm, we're still working. We're selling cash. We're not opposed to giving you a cash bid. We're not opposed to, selling you windows, because we do more than just a standard insurance claim. We do attic installation in the wintertime. We have interior. I personally have remodeled 2 bathrooms that we sold. Decks, fences, whatever it may be. So somebody that has, that breadth of services is going to be a good identifier that they're local and they're not, your standard storm chaser. The biggest factor that we see in the storm industry, it's not, a lot of people think you're defrauding the insurance company. You have coverage for it. If you were defrauding the insurance company, they wouldn't write you a check for it. They'd say, no, this isn't covered, but there's coverage for it. So therefore, it's not a game or a joke. It's not a defrauding of the insurance company, because your insurance company's smarter than all of us. So if they didn't want to pay for it, they wouldn't. What the problem is that obviously a few bad apples destroys an industry. And you have guys that do travel the country, and you have guys that see, oh, you can make a lot of money doing this. I can do this with my 3 other buddies. You have the 2 guys out of the back of a truck effect, which you have on the cash side as well. Oh, I need a quick roof. I'm selling the house. I'll just go with the cheapest bid. Hey, these 2 guys have a truck. They can do a roof. Well, now all of a sudden, everybody that has a truck and a ladder is a storm chaser. They don't know what they're doing. They're telling people to file claims and spending their time thinking, hey, I think there's damage. I don't really know if there is, or I think that's damage because I'm just not educated enough to identify what isn't damage. Telling these people to file their claims, getting them partial roofs instead of full roofs or complete denials. And now people think, this is a scam. My insurance company's telling me, oh, there's no damage, but he's telling me damage. What are you trying to do? Are you just trying to get a new roof so you can make some money? That's the issue, is a lack of education in the construction side. And, a lot of people running to this industry thinking, oh, I can make a quick buck. If you last more than 3 years in this industry, then you're probably going to make it. Most of our competitors, though, that you see, most roofing companies that you see, you're not going to see for more than 3 years. They're going to pop up, they're going to make some money, and then they're going to be gone because they're going to bankrupt themselves because they can't handle this industry. You have to have cash flow in this industry. So on an insurance claim, and I'll so actually here, I'm going to escape out of this and go into this because this is perfect for this. So this is the realtor handout that I give to my realtors. On an insurance claim, how the claim works. When you file a claim, can they raise your rate for wind and hail? Yes and no. They cannot raise your rate for catastrophic claims. You have no way of protecting your house against acts of God unless it's a mass catastrophe. So like if it's a hurricane, everybody's getting an increase whether you file a claim or not. If it's a large enough hailstorm, you may get an increase whether you file a claim or not because it's a mass catastrophe. But in general, they're not going to raise your rate for a catastrophic claim. They're going to raise it for negligent claims, fire, theft, flood. However, it is a claim. It still counts against you as a claim. If you have a 0 claims discount, you will lose that. It goes against your insurability rating score. So the carrier's looking at the big picture. They're not looking at your home and that you've never had a claim on your home. They're looking that you had a car accident last year and you've got 3 teenage kids that each have had 2 car accidents and you had a water heater burst at your vacation home. You have a lot of claims as far as they're concerned, meaning that they have a higher cost to them. So they're either going to drop you or increase your rate. In that situation with that many claims, they would probably drop you. It depends. Every carrier is different with how many claims they're going to allow and in what time span. Is it 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? Once you file that claim, the big issue that we see with storm chasers or fly-by-nights, I'll use storm chasers, that's the term that you used, is that, like I said, lack of education. They're throwing it against the wall. The problem, and I'll do another video on this, the problem is in our industry, that works. So the insurance adjusters come out and sometimes they just want to write a check. Sometimes they don't. So they may just write you a check when, was it questionable? Sure, but they can sell it. The insurance adjusters, the insurance carriers cannot guarantee how busy they're going to be. They don't know how many storms there's going to hit in a certain year. They don't know if there's going to be tornadoes or hurricanes or anything. They can only estimate. So the insurance adjusters don't actually work for the insurance company. They work for one of the large adjusting firms that have adjustment contracts with these carriers. They then get paid per claim, per inspection that they do. A lot of them get paid a commission based on that claim as well. If it's a large claim and there's a lot of work, instead of getting a flat $150 to go out and inspect it and write it, and there's a lot going on with it, it switches from a flat rate to, hey, you had to write this, big $60,000 loss that has interior damage and siding and gutters and roofing and fencing, pool damage. You're going to get 2% of the claim. So now all of a sudden the adjuster's like, oh, well, if I find more damage, I may make more money. They're interested in their own livelihood. So if you throw it at the wall and file claims that may not have great damage and you get the right adjuster, you may get it bought even if there's not really any good damage. So you have these contractors that don't know what they're looking for, or are willing to waste their time and homeowners' times by doing something like that, and they don't have a high success rate, but they're making money doing it. And therefore you have these homeowners that get screwed. They don't get a roof approved. They lose their 0 claims discount because there should have never been a claim to begin with. And that's the biggest fault that we have. It's just a lack of education on these guys and a lack of knowing how to manage their time and build their business instead. If they focus on doing only quality claims, then they're only going to have quality claims. They're going to use their time. They're going to go to that house and say, hey, this house is not worth cleaning yet. I'm going to come back and I'm going to inspect it after the next storm. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to inspect it every single year to make sure that your roof is doing okay. And when it's time to replace it, I'll let you know it's time to replace it. It may be through an insurance claim. It may be as a cash bid. And once the roof's getting older, I'm going to inspect it twice a year, once in the spring after the storms and once in the wintertime, so you're not going to have any issues. That's how my business is built. So all of my business is through referrals, and I have hundreds of customers that their roofs aren't ready yet. But when they are, because I was honest with them, they're going to call me. And I'm going to stay in front of them, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to do those annual inspections that I promised them to make sure that their roof is doing what it's supposed to be doing. And hopefully I'll be able to file an insurance claim for them. I want to file an insurance claim for them, not to take advantage of the insurance claim, but nobody wants to write a $15,000 check for their roof. That's a big chunk to chew. You know, if they have to, then we offer financing as well. But is the next facet with storm chasers. So you have your fly-by-nights, the guys that you have storm chasers that just aren't educated, and then you have fly-by-nights. Fly-by-nights are guys that travel the country from storm to storm to storm. And the problem that we have with them is they do shoddy work. They come in, they have a crew, they pull a crew off the street, and they slap on a roof. Oh yeah, you have a warranty, and then you'll never hear from them again. You never track them down again. They probably change their company names for every single town they go into. I remember the 2014 storm that hit Algonquin. Mad Sky. Mad Sky is a whole another topic I'll get into in another day. But they rented, the guy's smart, and they're now much, much bigger than they should even allow to be. They actually ended up buying a townhouse in the same complex that one of our guys lived in, and they had 7 guys living out of this townhouse. So they had a local address and a local phone number. They weren't local. They came in, they did shoddy work, and then they were gone. We had huge labor increases from them because they stole our crews and offered our crews more money. So they're operating on very slim profit margins. So they've got to go from storm to storm. You have the contractors that come in that try to steal business. There was a contractor in Streamwood a few years ago that was giving away a free flat screen TV if you did a roof with them.
Wow.
It's like, from a homeowner perspective, yeah, I want that I want that TV. Oh yeah, I'm going to do quality work and I'm going to give you a TV. Why are you giving me a TV? Why do you need the business that bad that you have to give me a TV is what a homeowner should be asking. But there's, you know, the easy way to say it is, so my manager, like on day one, he looked at me and said, Eric, there's 5 types of homeowners. You have your first type of homeowner. This is your favorite homeowner, the free shit homeowner. You're going to tell them that you can get them a free roof through the insurance company. They're going to say, okay, where do I sign? Unfortunately, those homeowners never do any of their research. You know, they're great customers to get because it's boom, 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 boom. But yeah, if anybody waves a TV or any type of discount in front of them, they don't care.
Yeah.
So aside from the fly-by-nights, which are going to do shoddy work, and the homeowner's going to end up with issues, and then they end up calling me, and I got to go back and fix flashing that somebody never ever did. The next aspect that we have is actual fraud of the insurance carrier. So this is legitimate fraud, is going to be contractor damage or damage that was caused, you know, intentionally to attempt to get a new roof or siding or whatnot. Does it happen? Yeah. Is it something, you know, that, you know, shouldn't happen? Absolutely. How often does it happen? Everybody hears stories, and I talk to tons of adjusters. I'm friends with adjusters, and everybody's got, you know, their crazy stories of stuff that they ran into. You know, so you'll have, you know, you'll go up on a roof. So I have a claim in Aurora. It was a referral actually from my agent. The homeowner called their agent to make a claim, and with this specific agent, he sends me out before any claim is filed just to kind of do a preliminary inspection to make sure that it's worth the claim. Because when you file a claim, it hurts your agent. It goes against their loss rate ratio. So if they can avoid you filing a claim, they will. And no agent's going to admit to that. I just got into it with an agent about that, because his client is a realtor, and I was going to secure her as a COI, center of influence, a referral source for me. And I said, oh yeah, let me talk to your agent. And he convinced her not to file a claim. She has legitimate damage. She's going to pay cash for her roof. And her window screen, she just paid a couple $1,000s to have repairs because she believes her agent is telling her the truth. I'm sorry, he's lying to you. At the end of the day, he's lying to you, is what it is, because he didn't want to claim underneath his belt. He was in a strong storm area that got hit really, really bad, and probably 80% of his customers probably filed a claim, and he couldn't afford one more against him. But
That's horrible.
It's horrible. But the problem with the problem with this industry is it's a game. Your damage honestly means nothing. It's a game between the insurance carrier, the adjuster, the agent, and the contractor. So anyway, back to this claim I had in Aurora. It came from the insurance agent, and I went out there and I looked at it. And is there damage? Absolutely. I filed it as a vandalism claim. I didn't file it as a wind and hail claim. I called the agent and I said, hey, listen, this is vandalism. I'm like, there's a bunch of missing shingles. I'm like, absolutely, there's missing shingles and it is consistent with wind damage. I'm like, but the date of loss is June of last year. And so it was earlier on in the year. You have 1 year to file a claim in Illinois, so you've got to get that claim in before that loss date. I said, so the loss date is June 26th of last year. I'm like, I'm looking at these missing shingles. The tar is still tacky. It's still shiny and tacky. I'm like, you're telling me that the tar, the mastic strips, maintained their, shininess and stickiness through the entire winter all the way into this summer? I'm like, this is new damage. This isn't old damage. It's like, so realistically, could I say it's vandalism? No, I don't know. They actually ended up putting it through as a wind and hail claim using the June date because there's no way to prove that it was. Could it have been from another storm, a newer storm that caused that wind damage? Yeah. Based on storm reports, it's unlikely. But there's no way to say otherwise.
All right.
So, unfortunately, that is an aspect that we run into. But if you've been doing it for a while, you know what to look for. You know those, aspects to look for. Saying, oh, that's fresh. When's the storm date? That doesn't make sense. That's when you're looking at the collateral damages. Hey, based on the collateral damages that I'm seeing, I see a lot of small damage to the aluminum siding and the metal vents, but these hail hits on the roof are huge. Maybe it was a ball peen hammer because it's not consistent with the collateral damage. And those things that your insurance carriers do look at as well, so they will inspect for it, but a lot of insurance carriers, a lot of adjusters will recognize that and they'll identify it, but it's not worth the red tape.
All right, couple more questions. What about making a claim? So when we're involved, there's always going to be a transfer of property ownership. So my client, the new owner, are they able to make a claim on the previous owner's insurance, or do they have to go through their own insurance?
Absolutely. So when I deal with a home closing, ideally what would happen is you go out, they inspect the property, identify there's an issue, we come out, we agree, we file a claim. And we basically put the job in as rush and get it built before actual closing. If it does not get built before actual closing, the attorneys hold some money back in escrow before we get the final checks and it closes out. The issue with insurance claims that we have is the checks don't go direct to the homeowner, they go to the homeowner, then they have to go to the lender as well. And the lender may or may not do an inspection, so it can really draw out the process. And where it comes to, hey, we need to close, what do we do? In a case where it's after closing and it's inspected, can the claim be made against the previous owner's insurance? Absolutely. The insurance that was liable during the date of loss, whoever the insurance was on that date of loss, even if it's, your own home, and let's say you switched insurance companies 2 weeks ago, but 4 weeks ago there was a storm, you can call the old insurance company because they were the carrier at the time of loss. Here's the difficulty, is the new owner cannot call and make that claim on the old owner's insurance. The old owner has to initiate the claim. So the seller has to be willing to make that claim either during the sale, before or after, however it turns out to be. But the seller has to be willing to make that. I can't say, hey, Charles, I bought this house from you. I had a roofer out, they inspected it. There's hail damage from the storm a month and a half ago. I'm going to make a claim against your insurance company. No, I've got to call you or call my closing attorney to get a hold of your closing attorney to get a hold of you to say, hey, the buyer wants to make a claim against your insurance company. Can you call them and file a claim? And then the checks still get made payable to you. So I've got to rely on you to process the checks to the contractor or to myself. So that way the damages can get paid for. That unfortunately is the difficulty. So ideally the seller needs to be on board either way. And ideally it would be before closing that we're moving everything along. So my contract would actually be with the seller, not with the buyer. That's the safest route to go. Can it go the other way? Absolutely. But there's more risk involved as far as payment goes.
So getting, when we see this stuff doing our inspections, that's kind of when our client has more power, let's say, to go ahead and get things taken care of. Just because the sale wants to go through.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. It's because they still want the sale to go through. So our client's going to have a little more power. How long does it take, let's say we give your name and say, listen, this looks like there could be hail damage. We had some stuff come through here within a year ago. Or just to be sure, why don't you contact this guy? How soon, and we give him your name, how soon are you able to get out there and giving them some information?
So for anything that's dealing with home closing, we rush as quickly as we can. If it's a referral from a realtor, I'll find out, hey, is there a bid on it or whatnot, and then, schedule it accordingly. If it's something that came up on a home inspection, I will rearrange my schedule because I know it's time sensitive, or I will have somebody in my office go run it for me. You guys can if you ever have a question on anything, call me. Take a photo and text it to me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or hey, do you know what this is? I'm huge on text because I'm always running around all day long. So feel free to text me photos with questions of anything. I'm here as the support. For the inspection, I'll get out there as soon as I can. Assuming there's damage, we're going to file the claim right away. That day, next day, as long as the seller, is on board. Basically as quickly as possible. Here's the difficulty. In a non-COVID world, in general, an adjuster is going to contact us within 3 business days to set up that inspection. And that adjuster, based on insurance carrier, is going to come out in anywhere from 4 days to 2 weeks. So a couple of insurance companies, they're out really quick. A lot of the insurance companies, though, you're usually looking at a week to 2 weeks out. So let's comfortably assume 2 weeks on the outside. So let's say it's June 1st, and we file the claim. The adjuster comes out June 15th and inspects it. Here's the next thing. Based on the insurance company, that adjuster may have the authority to write the estimate on spot, or they may not have the authority to write it on spot and write a check, meaning it has to go to somebody to review, or maybe they just don't have time. So they're going to write it later on and mail it. Well, if they're writing it later on and mailing it, or it has to be reviewed, we're looking at maybe potentially another week, 2 weeks. Preferably the homeowner has online access and we can download the estimate from their online portal as soon as it's written. But if it takes the guy a week to write it, then we're waiting on a week. It's, have an online access, we may be looking at 2 weeks because of snail mail before we get that scope in. Once we get that scope in, then I need to meet with the homeowner, basically sign the contract and get into production ASAP. Being part of a home closing, it's going to get bumped to the front of the line because we want to get paid before it closes out. Ideally, we don't want to have that money sitting in an escrow account with the attorney because it's just more work for everybody. And greater risk. So it gets bumped to the front of the line, basically. We get the building permit, and we're building it, week, 2 weeks, maybe max. Now, ideally, and then we have to build the insurance company to mail out the final payment because they split the payments out into 2 payments, which is then going to take snail mail a couple weeks to come in. And then if there's a mortgage involved, which 95% of the time there is, the check has to go to the mortgage company. Based on the mortgage company, The mortgage company may choose to do a quality control check, meaning they do an inspection. That is going to add on an easy month right off the bat. So no matter what, we're past closing, basically. If there's a mortgage inspection, there's no way we're hitting closing.
Yeah.
But if everything goes smoothly, realistically, from time of inspection to time of closing, we could have it done in less than 3 weeks.
Wow.
So let's say you came out on June 1st, we came out on June 1st. Insurance adjuster comes out a week later, June 7th. It's State Farm. The guy has signing authority to write a check. He writes the check there on the spot. June 7th, I sign the contract with the homeowner. I get the building permit. We're building this thing, the 15th.
Wow.
Based on what we have in our schedule and material. So it's very possible that it can go very, very quick. The biggest factors on that timeline is, does the insurance adjuster write the estimate on spot, or do they mail it? And is the mortgage going to do an inspection? Those are our two biggest factors, and unfortunately, we don't know that until it happens. If it happens, it happens. It's not a big deal. The attorney holds the money in escrow. Sometimes that bothers a lot of sellers, and they're like, oh no, because maybe the seller needs that money to put as the down payment on their new home that they're purchasing. So if that's the case, now they have to bump out their closing, on this home and the home that they're buying as well. So that could be, a huge issue for them, which is what deters a lot of homeowners from actually pursuing this. And they're like, you know what, screw it, I'll just give a concession.
Yeah.
Which is very possible, because they're like, okay, well, I could do this, but hey, they're willing to settle on a smaller concession, than doing that. Ideally, the claim process is worth it. You're getting brand new material. They're not paying essentially anything for it. Their liability is their deductible, per their insurance agreement. It's it can move very quickly though, but sometimes it doesn't.
All right. So we do have you on our Facebook. Thank you for that. We do have you on our Facebook, so they can contact you there. I'm going to throw the end screen up here in just a second. So that's going to have your cell phone number and your email, so they can contact you there as well. What about, we have actually a lot of members. We're a statewide organization, so we got people in Bloomington, Springfield, Pekin, Peoria, St. Louis, Carbondale, not to mention, everywhere else across the state. Do you have contacts of legitimate insurance adjusters and people that, so if somebody comes to us on our Facebook, you say, yeah, I talked to Joe in Carbondale?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, we have a network of people. So if we don't specifically service the area, we will know either a contractor or a public adjuster somewhere else in the state. So down in the Peoria area, the guy that actually used to run our Milwaukee office now lives down there and runs his own contracting firm down there. So he ran our Milwaukee office, and then a tornado went through down there, and his parents still live down there. So he had 20, 30 claims, within a couple hours. And he basically called us and said, hey, I'm going Peoria because they just got hit with a tornado and all my friends and everybody are still down there. So I'm going to go run claims down there. So he ended up running claims down there and then basically just transitioned into his own business and stayed down there, which is, so we're totally amicable between the two of us. But, he's a good quality guy. Quality Cruise knows what he's doing. So we have networks like that from, just people who previously worked for us or that people we know in the industry, not only in Illinois, but nationwide as well. So
nice.
We do, different continuing education. We go and we travel to different conferences, to network and meet with these people. We have, different Facebook groups, where we talk to different people and we find out, hey, who's, quality guys. If I don't know somebody, then I'll reach out to my vendors and I'll say, hey, I've got this, customer in XYZ, what branch services that area, get in contact with the branch, talk to the branch manager and say, hey, who's the best contractor that you have? Because the vendors know who's good and who's bad. They know who's sleazy, who's doing what, and which crews are good, because they're doing training and negotiating pricing with these guys every single day. And I can say, hey, I need a good referral in this area. I just did that.
that gets counted toward the solar credit because it's required to prepare the roof in an installable fashion for the solar. So if you have, let's say, $100,000 roof, all of a sudden you got 30 grand from the roof and a credit that goes towards the actual cost of the solar. But anyway, back to the point at hand is they are a national company as well. So I have an additional slew of contacts through them in aligned areas that, if it is an area that I can't locate, I can always reach out to them and say, hey, who's your contractor in California, or whatever it may be, because your brother-in-law happens to be a health inspector in California, and, his customer now needs a roof. So they're a national company, so most of your smaller solar companies are actually basically resellers for them. They're the big face behind the name. Yeah, there's another whole network of people there as well.
Fantastic. All right. I ended up switching the screen, and because of which I cut off some of your audio. So I think we're just going to wrap everything up. So right now, yeah, it's awkward. I got to hold my earpiece to the my microphone so people can hear you. But nonetheless, I'm going to impose on you to do a couple things. First of all, a thank you for joining us as a vendor. It means a lot to us. It's good to have, what I consider very reputable, educated contractors that are willing to share their information with people like us that are going out there looking at these things. So thank you for that. Second of all, I'd like to ask that you post that letter that you have up there onto our Facebook group. Also, please put a link to this presentation. I will too, if you can't. I'm going to try and get those also on the YouTube channel, so if anybody views this, they'll be able to see it. And yeah, I got nothing more other than saying thank you. And if anybody has any questions, right in front of you, you have his cell phone, you got his email address. I did not put the website, so it's Expert Roofing, right? And expertroofing.com. That's simple. Thank you. So it's expertroofinginc.com. Fantastic. Sounds good. I like that. Keep growing. Grow, grow, grow. All right, I'm going to end this right now and stay on the phone with me, but